Hello and welcome to VistaTalks, interesting discussions with interesting people from all around the world. I'm your host for today, Simon Hodgkins, and I'm thrilled to introduce Astrid Illum. Astrid is a technology leader. She's got a wealth of experience in bridging ambitious business goals and practical technical solutions. Astrid joins us at an exciting time in her career because I know she recently transitioned in her role and is now a product leader for audience interaction at TV2 Denmark. So Astrid, you're very welcome to the show.
Thank you, Simon. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, let's jump straight in, Astrid. I mentioned that you've transitioned from DFDS, another well-known company, to TV2 as the product leader for audience interaction. So what attracted you to this type of work? I think you did some of this in your previous roles throughout your career and your experience, but what excites you most about this new sort of role that you're in now?
So I think that I've spent, as you say, a lot of years in the digital analytics and MarTech space and also working more broadly with the customer experience. But what really attracted me to TV2 is the unique opportunity also to work with a very rich content base. Because I think it's one of the things about TV2 that is well known in Denmark, that there's not just a lot of content, but it's also really great. It's top notch, and that really opens up a lot of interesting possibilities when you're working in the product and technological space. It's about creating more personalized experience for audiences, and one key ingredient in that is in fact content. So yeah, I think one of the challenges that I'm looking forward to working on is how to shape and move this content towards users so that they get the deeply relevant content at the right point in time, because that is where tech and user experience really can do something magic for the audience needs.
Well, look, we love all things content related here on VistaTalks, that's for sure.
Mhm.
And I love the word magic as well. It's great to drop that in. So that bringing together of this content, and as you say, top notch, to quote what you said a moment ago, the quality content, the output, and being able to match that using this technology and a little bit of magic stirred in is certainly an exciting space to be in. Now, I know in your career, your roles have been very international. And I'm very interested in asking you about this shifting focus, because obviously Denmark, TV2,
Mhm.
there seems to be, at least on the face of it, a shift from global to more national. Does that impact your approach, Astrid? You're still dealing with a diversified audience, I'm guessing. So how are you
Absolutely.
approaching that?
Yeah, so as you note, the audience is still diverse, but the diversity is on a different dimension. So the part of the interesting challenge I've been dealing with for many years on the international or global stage is complexity relating to both language, but also legislation and huge cultural differences. And one of the things that I find interesting is figuring out what is the key problem that you're trying to solve at a brand or a company. And then you need to look at how do you fix that with the technology. So when you need to work across many different languages, that can have really, really deep implications for how you approach your technology stack. So just all the way down to the transactional systems, language can be important, because the question becomes, where do I actually, as a user, signify what language I want to be discussed or talked to in? And how do you honor that as a company? So that's one huge and very interesting, complex challenge that I've been working on. But looking now at TV2, the shift is then to understanding the diversity within Denmark, because while Danes do speak Danish and that is the primary content language, we are incredibly diverse in how we engage with content. So we have different interests and preferences and habits. And all of this plays a huge role in how we balance these differences in the experience. How do we ensure that we understand that in the product and then activate it?
Yeah, thank you very much indeed for sharing some insights into that approach, because as you say, it is still a very diversified audience that you're looking to connect with. And as somebody who's leading that audience interaction at TV2, you're obviously, and we talked about it a little while ago, you're at that sort of crossroads, that epicenter, if you like, of technology and the user experience. So
Mhm.
if I was to ask you about how you see technology enhancing the way that companies like TV2 engage with their audiences, that must be changing fairly rapidly. We're in a world of AI today, for example.
Mhm. Yes, I think that there's two different kind of like avenues of change where technology is really pacing forward right now. So I think that it's a game changer on a lot of simple functionality and convenience. Also, for instance, related to language and texting. So suddenly we have the opportunity to do something quicker than we did before, or even in an automated fashion. And that is a really interesting perspective also for accessibility. That suddenly the cost of versioning or the cost of adding text and so on can be reduced potentially. And that allows us then to bring even more great content to people that need to have it in a different format. And that's where technology and AI has a really big opportunity to move us ahead. But the other aspect, I think, which is really important, is that while we've talked about omni-channel strategies for many years, I think that we're finally at a point in time where technology is able to actually deliver on some of those promises. So, as I said earlier, what problem are we trying to solve for the audience? Once we define that, then we can go into the technology toolbox and find the right solutions that can deliver that. So at TV2, that is a product-led approach that ensures that each tool and experience that we create serves a specific purpose, whether it's enhancing engagement through personalized recommendations or maybe making it easier for viewers to interact with content in real time.
Yeah, and I like what you said about, it almost feels that finally the technology might live up to its high billing, because sometimes technology gets hyped a lot. So I
Oh,
really
yeah.
like what you're saying there. And Astrid, obviously in a working environment, I want to maybe ask you a bit more of a cultural type question, but your career has mean that a lot of business is conducted in English, and now maybe there's a shift from English, say, back to Danish at TV2. And my
Mhm.
question is really this: does this change how you communicate from a communication style or a leadership approach? Is there any sort of nuances there you could share with our audience?
Mhm. Yes, it's been a really interesting shift. One fun little observation that I had, because the working language I've been using for many years has been English, and so just being a part of this workplace, I had suddenly the feeling like I'm at a family party, because it's like that intimate in a sense. But working internationally, I think I've developed a way of communicating that is very clear and direct, and actually also avoiding a lot of the subtext that you could normally use. Also, trying to avoid a lot of shared cultural references, because that doesn't fly when you're working in a department when you've got 10 plus different nationalities represented, right? Because you want to be equally accessible to all and equally understood by all. But now, speaking primarily in Danish in my everyday work, I find that the communication style can be a little bit more informal and perhaps also maybe more personal, feels more natural. And I think that also really, coincides well with how I want to lead, by being both approachable and open. So I think Danish actually helps to foster this more relaxed and direct environment. And people can feel comfortable coming to me, right, with ideas and concerns. But I actually think that the experiences I've gotten here in the international setting, thinking about inclusivity, that is still a good thing to carry with me, and that could benefit also the way I work at TV2, because it's about striking this balance in a sense between being open and direct, and then having that level of professionalism so that people are not feeling excluded by your communication, right?
Thank you for sharing that nuance, because I think it's fascinating, particularly in the modern work environment where it's a combination of in-office, hybrid, fully remote, people working all around the world. So thank you for sharing that, particularly from your perspective at TV2.
You're welcome.
Thank you, Astrid. The other thing I wanted to ask you, if you don't mind, is about, a lot of people watching this will look at your role and think, oh, that's great. That's a real cool place to be. Obviously, at TV2, and we talked about this abundance of high quality content, and you're at that crossroads with technology. But for people that are looking to climb their own sort of ladder within their organizations, they're looking at various leadership roles in tech and business sectors. Do you have any advice for any aspiring leaders who are looking to make maybe a significant impact in their organization?
Yes, that's a really good question. I think in my career, that has been primarily the way that I have moved forward in the different companies that I've worked at. So a gradual increase in responsibility. And I think actually that's the way that I've thought about it. So when I come to a new workplace, the thing I first care about is to understand what type of business is this, and what is the most proximate problem that I could assist on solving. So where do some issue or challenge exist that I'm close to that I could really move forward? And it doesn't have to be fully within my domain. I can notice it just on the outskirts of my current responsibility and begin to, attack it, begin to talk to others about it. And that kind of way of looking not just at your own little corner of the big, puzzle pieces, but looking more broadly is something that is, I think, in general appreciated also by management. When you take on responsibility, but you do it in a way where you're thinking about what can I actually change and solve. Because I think that maybe some people, they want to move forward and ahead by, getting more, a more prestigious position, or, like it's a goal in itself to become a leader. And personally, I think about it a little bit more the other way around, that it's about what type of responsibility am I willing to take on? So, how much do I want to devote? And how big a piece of this complicated thing that a business is do I feel ready to tackle?
It's so refreshing to hear that, Astrid. Thank you so much indeed for sharing that view, because quite often people can get carried away in climbing up their organizational ladder. But as you say, maybe sometimes taking a step back, looking at it a little bit differently, figuring out what you can solve, what you're willing to take on, and where you can make an impact. Certainly great advice.
Thank you.
Now, given the background that you have that we've been discussing here, you must see a lot of emerging trends. Of course, technology is always developing. But are there
Mhm.
any sort of emerging trends or strategies that you believe businesses today should be focusing on to remain competitive in this fast-moving global market we find ourselves in?
Yes, I do see some important consideration for brands, and that is that the international and global marketplace, the barriers of entry, both for regular e-commerce or product services, but also for media, the barriers of entry are just continuously lowering. And the type of products and the type of content is, of course, not necessarily extreme high quality, bespoke elements or solutions, but really fairly good still. And as a consumer, when you're choosing between spending maybe a lot of money on a high quality product or spending just a little on something that also is, easy and entertaining, that choice is becoming more and more skewed towards the very accessible and very easy types of products, and also the very accessible and easy types of media content. And whilst that is happening, the consumers become less invested in the brands. So one observation I've done is, taking an example that everybody has a feeling about, like something like TikTok. The connection between the user or consumer and the author of the content is really weakening, because as a user, you're just given a stream of continuous content that, is really well suited to where you are and your interests and your mindset. And you don't really care who made it, because it's serving the need you have here and now. So the implications of that is that there are exceptions. So if I say a big brand name that you actually feel connected to, you think that that has some kind of quality, or, some kind of position and trustworthiness that you can recognize. And I would say for any brand that's able to take that position, stay with it. So don't aim for the lowest bar. Don't try to mimic the very easy consumable, easy convenience entertainment. Stay with the brand quality of trustworthiness and quality, because the other game is a losing one.
That is exceptionally interesting. Thank you so much indeed for raising that, because that weakening between content creator and content consumer, I think, is a fascinating touch point that you've raised there. And also, of course, the benefit of the brand, and not to lose that if you have that, but to build on that.
Yeah.
That's certainly a lot to think about. Thank you for raising that. That's a very unique point. Very interesting, fascinating indeed.
Cool.
Let's move on a little bit, Astrid, because you've obviously got a big job to do here at TV2, and I'm interested in the way you're planning sort of the next sort of mid-term goals, long-term goals. How are you hoping to be able to help shape the future of audience interaction, whether that's from a technology integration stack or, wider out into sort of the media industry in general? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, first off, I'm very humble in the way that I approach this, because I think that TV2 is standing on a really great position and has a really great bid or position towards the consumers, the content, and the experiences. So that's something that I need to respect and enhance. So that's one of the first things that I think about. And whilst I'm preparing to see exactly what I can do to make that even better, I'm really approaching the task with a lot of humility and with a lot of curiosity and listening, because I don't think that technology is a silver bullet. And I don't think that the complexities or challenges that are there are easily solved, because it's great people that are working at this company. So whatever challenges that we are facing in how to make the experience even better, those are tricky problems. And some of these problems should be solved at the vision level, some should be solved at the technology level, some should be solved at the organizational level. And which of these are the most important levers to move in order to make things even better, I think is something that I'm waiting to discover. But I would also mention that already some really, really important and interesting steps have been taken in terms of becoming product-led. So creating this product organization is taking a huge step towards giving an answer to this equation. And that is a development that is already undergoing, that I'm then assisting on.
Well, that is an exciting journey that you have ahead, Astrid. It sounds incredible, and I wish you continued success. I mean, it brings us nicely, I suppose, to the end of our discussion today. And I just want to take a moment to thank everybody who's either watching or listening to this episode, and ask them to tune in again to see and or listen to the next VistaTalks show, where once again we'll be discussing more interesting topics with interesting people from all around the world. And all that remains for me to do is to thank you so much indeed for your time today, Astrid, for being on the show and for sharing a little bit of insight into your world. I think it's fascinating, and continued success at TV2.
Thank you so much, Simon. It's been a pleasure.